order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, excuse me, Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have that. Roll call, please. Mr. Sayre.
Commissioner Manley.
Here.
Alderperson Linder.
Here.
Commissioner Ritter.
Here.
Mayor Hokemer.
Here.
Commissioner Horsfall is running a few minutes late, but he will be here tonight. Commissioner Lytle.
Here.
And Commissioner Heinzen is absent and excused.
We do have a quorum of the Planning Commission, so we will begin the meeting. But before we do, we want to welcome Scott Manley back on the Planning Commission. Scott had been on the Planning Commission and then on the Common Council, and now back on the Planning Commission, sort of in the flip of positions with Jack Linder, who had done the same. So, Scott, welcome back to Planning Commission.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. It's my honor to be back, and I really look forward to, I really look forward to serving the city again, and thank you for the opportunity to do so. And I really enjoyed my time on the Plan Commission in the past, and I look forward to more of the same.
Well, thank you for your willingness to serve. We appreciate it. Next, we have approval of minutes. Included with your packet were the minutes of the April 7th meeting. What is your pleasure?
Move for approval?
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Linder. Were there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. Next thing I should say on the agenda is a public hearing for the conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a 60-foot tall flagpole for the Wisconsin Brewing Company to be located at 1079 American Way. And I would ask for a motion to open the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Ritter. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are in the public hearing stage. I would ask Mr. Sayre if you would provide the background, please.
The applicant's requesting a 60-foot tall flagpole to be located at the Wisconsin Brewing Company. One item to note here is that in the packet it did say 65 feet. That was a typo by the applicant. The request is for 60 feet. The property is zoned SI, which does permit structures up to 45 feet. Anything larger than 45 feet does take a conditional use permit. This is a recommendation to the council tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Anyone from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, I would accept the motion then to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are now on agenda item 4A, which is discussion and possible action regarding a conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a 60-foot tall flagpole for the Wisconsin Brewing Company to be located at 1079 American Way. Any discussion or potential motions? Ms. Ritter?
I'll make a motion to recommend that the Common Council approve the conditional use permit to allow the Wisconsin Brewing Company to construct a 60-foot tall flagpole located at 1079 American Way.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Linder. We are now open for any discussion, comments, questions. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and that will be on the Common Council agenda for Monday evening. You're welcome. Next, we have a public hearing on a conditional use permit to allow for an indoor commercial entertainment land use known as Orange Leaf Frozen Yogurt to be located at 611 Hometown Circle, Suite number 2. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? So moved. We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritter. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are in the public hearing stage. Mr. Sayre, if you provide the background, please.
Orange Leaf is requesting a conditional use permit to operate at 611 Hometown Circle. These uses are classified as indoor commercial entertainment, which takes a conditional use permit in the SC zoning district. This is the last space that's actually in the property. The site is actually 100% leased. One of the things we took a look at was parking on the site. Parking is sufficient on there. The code requires 52 spaces. 60 are required for the overall entire property with all the uses in there. And this is a recommendation tonight to the Common Council.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Is there a second by Mr. Lytle? All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are now on agenda item 5A, which we just had the public hearing on. Are there any comments, questions, or motions at this time? Mr. Linder?
I'll make a recommendation that, a motion to recommend that the Common Council approve the conditional use permit to allow an orange leaf frozen yogurt to be located at 611 Hometown Circle, Suite Number 2.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritter. Comments or questions on the motion? Comments or questions? Mr. Lytle?
I know we've had these discussions before around whether we would seek to include operating hours for the conditional use permit. And I'm trying to recall if, has the conditional use permit for the other tenant in the building, the Bruce Brothers, come before us yet?
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, it has. I don't recall hours being placed on that.
Okay. I see in their application they envision being open till 11, and I don't know whether we've had discussions or concerns related to hours of operation for anyone in this part of town. I don't think it's a major issue, but just curious as to whether that's been an issue or whether apparently we did not include that with the other tenant in the same building, so.
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, I think the thought in this location was, you look across the street, there's a baseball field, and there's really no residential area around here. I think we may have discussed this, but Bruce Brothers, but I could be wrong. But I think the thought was that since there was no residential zoning surrounding it, that noise wouldn't be an issue in this location.
Other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion before you is to recommend approval of the conditional use permit. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries, and that will also be on the Common Council agenda for Monday evening. You're welcome. Next, we have a public hearing on a conditional use permit amendment to the Epic Systems Corporation Group Development to allow for the construction of an underground parking structure located at 1979 Milky Way. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing? We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Mr. Sayre, would you provide the background, please?
This is a request for a conditional use permit amendment to Epic's group development permit to allow for the construction of the underground parking structure. The amendment that's requested is to their initial permit that they received in 2003 when they first started the project. Anytime they add a building or a structure to the property, they're required to amend this group development permit. What a group development is, it's a permit that allows multiple buildings or structures on one parcel. So that's the amendment tonight. This is a recommendation to the Common Council.
You've heard the background on the information. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept the motion to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Ritter. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are now on agenda item 6A, which again is the conditional use permit. Are there any questions, comments, or potential motions? Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Manley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for staff. Looking at the site plan or the location map of where the parking ramp would go, has the applicant indicated where the Campus 5 buildings are likely to be placed at this time?
Mr. Sayre?
Short answer is no. They're still working through those details on where those could go. I would anticipate you'd see a similar situation where you have it with Campus 4, where you'd have some buildings on the ramp, and then you'd probably have a couple buildings off the ramp. But I know they're still working on those details, and we'll continue to work on those until they're finalized. But my guess would be, due to how Campus 4 got set up and how it laid out, you'd have a very similar situation at Campus 5 as well.
So if I could follow up,
Go ahead.
as we're looking at the kind of the curvy road that runs in a north-south direction just to the east of the ramp, you think it's likely that Campus 5 will be to the west of that?
We have Bruce, did you want to respond to that? And Bruce, if you would, make sure that the mic is on, please.
Bruce Richards with Epic. We have not laid the buildings out yet, but we think that we're somewhere, like we said earlier, some are sitting on the ramp, some are off the ramp. We just don't have an exact location yet. We're very sensitive to how close they're going to be to the road and to the other buildings that are there. So we're still trying to work through those details. The ramp we're proposing here will be fully underground with underground tunnels feeding the ramp. It will not be an exposed ramp at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Linder?
Mr. Richards, is there going to be something built on top of the parking structure then, ever? Or
There could be.
could be?
It could be like Campus 4 where there are multiple buildings sitting on top of the structure, but we just don't have enough detail at this point.
So you could theoretically have 2 more campuses then?
We could have 2 campuses, or we may expand the 2 campuses we do have with additional buildings based on the space that's available. Yeah, we're still looking at, there'll be a stormwater retention pond that's going to be in that whole area down there. It's going to be a fairly decent-sized retention pond, we believe at this point. So you can't look at the map and think that every space is going to be filled with buildings, because it won't.
Further questions, comments from Planning Commission members? No questions or comments? What about potential motions? Again, this would be a recommendation to the Common Council. Mr. Linder?
Make a motion to approve the site plan for the proposed underground parking structure to be located at 1979 Milky Way, and recommend that the Common Council approve an amendment to Epic's Group Development Conditional Use Permit to allow for the construction of an underground parking structure.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lytle. We are open now for discussion on the motion. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? No questions or comments on the motion. I will then call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and that will be on the Common Council agenda for Monday evening. Agenda item 6B is approval just for the Plan Commission. And Mr. Sayre, anything to add?
No.
Questions, comments, or potential motions on the site plan review for Epic Systems Corporation to construct the underground parking structure? Mr. Lytle?
I guess maybe we should make sure, I believe the previous motion encompassed both items. I don't know if we want to specifically have a second motion for the site plan approval.
Yes.
Oh, was both? I'm sorry, Scott, was it both?
Yeah.
Okay, so that 6A then would go to
6A and B are together.
6A would go to Common Council, 6B would not. Okay, so it's been approved. So we're done with that one then? Okay, then we are on, thank you for that clarification. We are then on agenda item number 7, which is a public hearing on a zoning map amendment to 509 Bruce Street to rezone the property from current urban commercial zoning to the proposed urban industrial zoning district. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Horsfall. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are in the hearing stage, public hearing stage. Mr. Sayre, if you'd provide the background, please.
This is a request to rezone the property at 509 Bruce Street from urban commercial to urban industrial. On the screen, the property in question is the one that's in the salmon color. This is a site that is challenging, to say the least. There's actually a fire there in 2010 that actually caused significant amounts of damage on the property, which has made it difficult to make some improvements in there. The second challenge of this property is that it is located within a floodplain, which then once again limits further improvements unless the property is flood-proofed or the elevation of the structure is raised. So it is a challenging property. From a comprehensive planning standpoint, if you look around, all the properties surrounding it for the most part are zoned industrial. The nearest commercial property to this one is approximately 4,000 feet away. I think it's in downtown. So this is kind of the outlier in this area. And finally, the city's comprehensive plan does recommend this parcel be industrial as part of a business park in the future as well. This is a recommendation tonight to the Common Council, and next item on the agenda is the conditional use permit, which I can talk about that then.
Okay. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item? Going to third and final time. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept the motion to close the public hearing. We have a motion by Mr. Horsfall. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now ready for discussion, comments on, or a potential motion on agenda item 7A. Ms. Ritter?
I'll make a motion to recommend that the Common Council approve the zoning map amendment to rezone 509 Bruce Street to urban industrial.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Linder. Any comments or questions on the motion? Mr. Lytle?
I know one of the challenging conditions you mentioned for the site is that it is within a floodplain. In order to continue to utilize the building, is that purely a matter of the owner and their property insurance company, or is something triggered where if there was significant reconstruction of the building, the floodplain issues and risks associated with that come into play?
Mr. Sayre?
So the property can be used. It is grandfathered. The challenge with the fire was when you make improvements to it, you can only make up to 50% of what the value of the building is. Once you exceed that 50% of the improvements of what the building is worth, then you have to then flood-proof it in some manner or raise the elevation of the structure. So the improvements is kind of the trigger of when they start putting money into the building. With the use, it's the next one on the agenda, obviously, but looking at more of an industrial use, you know, they don't need to make those improvements.
Mr. Horsfall?
And with that said, so the trigger isn't the zoning, the trigger is the improvement, just to...
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Great, thanks.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, the motion that is before you is to approve or recommend approval of the zoning map amendment to rezone the property from current urban commercial to urban industrial. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now on agenda item 8, which would be a public hearing for the conditional use permit to allow an outdoor storage land use to be located at 519 Bruce Street. I would accept the motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Ritter. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Sayre, provide the background, please.
Outdoor storage uses require a conditional use permit within the urban industrial district. The property in question is on the, should be on the screen right now. As you can tell, it's been underutilized for the past 3 to 4 years, ever since that fire did occur in 2010. The applicant approached me and is interested in having outdoor storage on the property. His business is, he does a lot of underground utility work, a lot of the work at Epic. They're based out of Fond du Lac, but also do a lot of work in Iowa. So due to the location of Epic and all the work they do in this area, coupled with the fact that this is more of a middle ground between Fond du Lac and Iowa, he'd be using this site for the outdoor storage of his construction equipment when they're transporting it between job sites. So when a piece of equipment is not being used at a site, it would be stored in the rear of the property behind the fence you can kind of see off in the distance there. And as I stated, this does require a conditional use permit. The zoning ordinance does have a variety of specific conditions that any conditional use of this nature has to meet. I guess the important ones, I'll just point them out. One is all outdoor storage areas shall be completely enclosed by any permitted combination of building structures, walls, or fencing. 2, the storage of items shall not be permitted in required frontage landscaping or buffer yard areas. 3, storage areas shall be separated from any vehicle parking or circulation areas by a minimum of 10 feet. 4, materials being stored shall not interfere in any manner with either on or off-site traffic visibility, including potential traffic and pedestrian conflicts. And 5, inoperable vehicles, equipment, or other items typically stored in a junkyard or salvage yard shall not be stored under the provisions of this land use. I think one thing to point out when staff was taking a look at this is when you look at the air photo, there's a lot of storage already going on in this area of the city. You have the bus company to the kind of southeast here. This is actually the city yard. We parked some vehicles there. You have the adjacent property at Bruce Street, which we have the permit last month on that one, but there's things out there as well. And I know there's a variety of things that have been dumped at this property over the years that the applicant would be cleaning up as part of this permit. There's a couple boats back there, and I think there's a semi-tractor trailer back there as well that have to be removed too. From a staff perspective, obviously the challenges with this property is that it's in a floodplain, and it makes it a little more challenging to do things in there because of that. There's obviously additional costs with that. I think an outdoor storage use is probably an appropriate use for it. I think the nice thing about what is being proposed here tonight as well is that just even using this property would be an improvement. I mean, it's sat vacant for 3 to 4 years now, and it'd be just to improve the look of that area would be nice to happen in the city as well. So this is a recommendation to the Common Council tonight for this conditional use permit. I know the applicant is here as well. If you have any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those questions too.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. We are in the public hearing stage. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this agenda item? Anyone who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Going to third and final time. Anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would accept a motion then to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Manley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are now on agenda item 8A, again, which would be a recommendation to the Common Council. Do we have any motions, comments, questions? Mr. Horsfall?
I guess that's the city engineer. I'm not sure how much traffic there's going to be, but is Bruce Street, are we worried about damage to the road if they're bringing in a bunch of large equipment lots of times during the summertime?
Mr. Gunlock?
With the gas station down there off of Bruce Street and Investment Court, there's a lot of truck traffic that comes in and out of there to fuel at that gas station, and the street hasn't shown any adverse wear, so.
So a little incremental load due to the increased traffic is
yeah,
not going to be
isn't
too
gonna
much.
hurt it, no.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Ritter?
The company that's listed here as applicant, they're not the owner of the parcel, correct?
Mr. Sayre?
Correct, they'd be leasing the parcel from the actual owner.
Okay. And a second question that I
Go ahead.
have is what type of improvements, if any, will be made to the building?
Mr. Sayre?
I know they're looking at the fencing out there. The fencing, obviously, you have to maintain and they have to screen that. So the fencing would be at least fixed or possibly replaced and improved. I know they've spoken with the actual owner itself and looking at painting the building and just trying to improve the
Aesthetics
general
of it.
look of it that is there right now. Most likely it'll just be paint.
Mr. Linder?
The building looks better already. I was just out there tonight than the picture you shown, so that's improvement. Will there be any stuff stored between the front of the building and the street?
Mr. Sarah?
No, it would not be allowed by ordinance. So they can park their employee vehicles there. If the employees are meeting there at a carpool to a site, they could park those employees in front there. But you wouldn't have any construction equipment there. You might see a couple cars there, but that'd be about it.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Horsfall?
Just another quick one. It says normal operations is Monday through Thursday, 7 to 5:30. So is there going to be a restriction on working on Saturdays when that area gets overloaded with traffic?
Mr. Sarah?
Because I'd hate to have a, guy trying to pull a trailer in when there's soccer going on and all this stuff and, not be able to fit it in there, that kind of thing.
Mr. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't, that hasn't been discussed. I haven't discussed that with the applicant. I'm not sure if he wants to comment on that, if you want to come to the podium and.
And if you would, please identify yourself.
Jerry Draves with Eilertson Incorporated, and usually we don't work on Saturdays, and most of the equipment is going to be left on job sites. And it's very seldom that, there's going to be that much traffic of trucks going in and out of there. It'll be mostly pickups than the big semis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. Lytle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that we recommend the Common Council approve the conditional use permit for the property at 509 Bruce Street with the condition that prior to the permit becoming valid, the Common Council has to approve the zoning map amendment that we just had on our agenda.
We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. We are open for discussion on the motion. Questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval or recommended approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and that will be on the Common Council agenda for Monday evening as well. You're welcome. The next two items, number 9 and 10, just require Plan Commission approval, and then 11 through 14, we are not looking at any action. So just keep that in mind. So, agenda item number 9 is discussion and possible action regarding a site plan review for the Prairie Oaks Apartments for a building addition located at 360 Prairie Way Boulevard. Mr. Sarah, if you'd provide the background, please.
This is a request for a building addition to construct 192 square feet for storage space at the apartment building. The existing area where the addition is going is actually a screened porch. They're proposing to convert that into a storage area. I think they have a golf cart out there and some salt for maintenance in the winter and just for materials and supplies that were in the area. If you go out there right now, the addition was started without any permits. They're kind of working through the process with the applicant. That's why we're here tonight. Most of what was constructed out there, is my understanding, will have to come off and it'll be restarted once all approvals are obtained by both the Plan Commission and the building inspector. From a bulk standpoint, the proposed addition meets all setbacks. From a design standpoint, it will be blended in to match the existing materials on the actual building right now, and it will be a seamless transition. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission waive the initial review for the proposed building addition and approve the site plans for the Prairie Oaks Apartments to construct an addition located at 360 Prairie Way Boulevard.
You've heard the explanation from Mr. Sayre. Questions, comments, motions? Mr. Manley?
Thank you. Adam, I'm not sure I heard correctly about what happens with respect to the work that's already been done out there?
Mr. Sayre?
My understanding with speaking with the structural engineer was what was started out there probably doesn't meet code, and his comment was it probably would have to be removed and restarted again. So if you drove out there today, you'd see some work that was completed on it, and that would have to be removed, and then it would be redone under the guidance of the structural engineer and the city building inspector.
So the reason for the removal of the work that's already done isn't because they didn't come here first. If the work that was done was up to code, it wouldn't be ripped out.
Correct, it could stay, and then we just move on once the approvals are obtained.
Thank you.
Further comments, questions, motions? Mr. Lytle?
Just one more question. Thank you,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor, before a motion. I don't know, Adam, if you've talked with the applicant or if there's someone here tonight, but so they've got this whole apartment complex that they're managing, and there's no other maintenance facility or storage area in the complex? Or is this just overflow for what wouldn't fit elsewhere?
Mr. Sayre?
You know, I suspect it's probably overflow, and a lot of the materials are more of outside nature. It's not things that you put inside, stuff you'd usually put in a shed. You know, so one of the conversations I know I had was, well, instead of doing the addition, you could do a shed out there instead as well. You know, there's a couple different options here. But what's driving it, I think, is my understanding is the golf cart, and then salt in the winter, and then I think there's a pool out there as well, so maybe some pool supplies as well. So it's mostly stuff that you wouldn't put inside your house. And most apartment buildings are constructed not with a large outdoor storage area, so I think this, due to the size of this complex, they probably have needs of a lot more supplies that other projects would have.
Thank you. With that in mind, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Lytle.
And make a motion that we approve the site plan for the addition located at 360 Prairie Way Boulevard.
We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second?
Do you want to just
Go ahead, Jeff.
reissue that?
Just to clarify that includes waiving the initial review and making the action tonight.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Second. Second by Mr. Horsfall. Questions or comments on the motion? Again, this is just Plan Commission action. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We're on agenda item 10, which is site plan review for the City of Verona to construct a new fire station at 101 Lincoln Street. Mr. Sayre?
Thank you. This is a request for the city to construct a new fire and EMS station located at the existing station site at 101 Lincoln Street. The proposed station would replace the existing building. The proposed facility would have 30,000 square feet on the first floor, 11,400 feet on the second floor, and approximately 4,000 square feet in the basement area. Tentatively, construction is planned to start in July of this year. From a bulk standpoint, I know we've talked about this during the initial review in this winter, but staff has encouraged the architect to push the building as close as he can to the right-of-way. The right-of-way line is this line running directly through here, so we have a very large area between the actual property and the road itself. It's an old DOT right-of-way that we're having to work with. So we recommended a 7-foot setback of the building off that right-of-way line. Our recently adopted downtown plan has a recommendation of a 5-foot setback, so it is a minimum of 5-foot setback, so it is consistent with that. Part of the reason for that small setback too is when the property to the west of here redevelops, they don't have this large right-of-way to deal with. So trying to create more of a consistency of a setback, trying to put this building as close as we can to the road to try to hopefully foster that consistent look as you go down Verona Avenue. Parking and access from the emergency vehicle standpoint, they would come onto Verona Avenue. There is a future traffic signal planned at Lincoln and Verona Avenue as well that would be constructed concurrently or before the station is completed. So when there is a fire or emergency, those signals at both Lincoln and Enterprise would be preempted from the station. They'd flip, it'd allow the trucks to get out of here making a right or a left-hand turn. When the trucks return from their calls, they could either come in through Lincoln Street off the backside here, or there's actually enough space in this front apron here where they can make that right turn in and turn around in there and make a U-turn and back into the bay if they had to. So that's how access would be obtained. People coming to the site, they'd come in through Lincoln Street, and that would be the spot for them. The site itself provides 73 parking spaces, and that's only the area here shown in the darker gray. In looking at parking, we looked at there's a large community gathering space within this facility. It's approximately 2,300 square feet. That space requires 51 parking spaces. We also then plan for approximately 20 future spaces that could be required from a staffing level, which then puts us at 71. So there is sufficient parking on this property. For comparison purposes, the senior center has 63 parking spaces, and that community space within that facility is approximately 3,500 square feet. So that's a larger space, and it has fewer parking spaces than this site would have. So staff is comfortable with the parking that is shown on here. Landscaping plans are still in the process of being finalized. Tentatively, we have landscaping scattered about the site in areas that are green. We're also looking at landscaping within the DOT right-of-way. We've had some conversations with DOT to see if they would approve of that as well, and those will be ongoing before we would actually plant those. We'd want assurances that they wouldn't be removed, but that will be finalized in the near future, and it will meet all the point requirements. Stormwater, there's 2 stormwater options we're looking at right now. The site plan on the screen shows on-site ponds. That's the first option we are taking a look at. The second option that we are considering is a more of a regional facility that would be located south of here, actually right behind where we're sitting tonight. So we're investigating both those options, seeing which one will be the best for the site and for the city long term. And I know we don't have any closure on that, but we are working through those details as we speak. Architecturally, it'll be very similar to what you saw back in February. It has more of a modern fire station look versus your historic fire station. That's because most of the buildings in this area of the city have that newer, modern look to it. The look also attempts to play off of some of the architectural features at City Hall. Similar to other buildings on Verona Avenue, you have lots of glass facing Verona Avenue. On the corner here, you will have a old antique fire engine that would be placed within the facility. There's also going to be a monument or flagpole area as well, kind of as a gateway to downtown. Majority of materials on this will be brick and stone, similar to other high quality projects done in the city. Staff has no concerns with this. One of the changes from the previous renditions was the brick was actually made a little bit more red to it, to kind of give it that more of that firehouse, kind of build off what a traditional look is, even though it isn't a traditional building, but trying to make it look a little more like a firehouse. One of the items shown on here that I did not touch on is a future building as shown here. The Verona Area Community Theater is obviously looking for space. I don't think that's any secret. They've been looking for a while now. One of the sites that staff has possibly identified as a future location for the theater group is here at the fire station. So we've shown a building on here as a possible placeholder, and nothing has been finalized, but just as conceptually showing how you could have a fire station on this property and you could possibly have a community theater building on here as well. They'd have their own parking area. Most likely this parking would connect in some fashion. There'd be shared parking for larger events at the fire station. You'd have additional parking on the site, and obviously for theater events as well, you'd have additional parking here too. We've also discussed if parking was an issue, we could construct a path across the Military Ridge Trail to the city parking lot out here and add additional parking if parking were to become an issue. I think it's important to note, once again, this is just conceptually shown as something that we are in conversations about. The approval tonight is only for the fire and EMS building. This is merely just being shown as master plan the site of how this could work. Any approvals for the community theater group would require to come back for the plan commission for site plan approval, and it would also take a group development approval because you'd have 2 buildings on one property. But once again, we just wanted to see what the plan commission thoughts were on this, just to kind of show it as a master plan for the property of how this could work. So with that said, staff does recommend the plan commission approve the site plan at 101 Lincoln Street to allow for the construction of a new fire and EMS facility.
Mr. Sayre, would you speak to the issue of where the new facility would be located and how that would be impacted by the current facility during construction? Do you know the answer?
I can.
Okay, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, the plan for construction would be that you'd be phasing the construction. So initially, you'd likely be tearing down the administrative part of the current fire station, which is on the northern side of the building, and locating staff in temporary quarters on the site, possibly a trailer. We anticipate that we would be able to keep the vehicle bay portion of the current facility operational during construction, so the emergency vehicles would continue to operate out of those bays. The new station would be completed. Once the new structure is built, those vehicles would move over to the new facility, and then the remainder of the current station would be torn down and the rest of the parking lot and the site work be completed. So that would allow us to continue to operate on this site during the entire construction period. Fitch Rona EMS is currently located off of this site on a facility that the city leases on Venture Court. They would not be locating into this facility until after completion.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And by doing that, it causes less disruption of the services, number one, but it's also less construction costs moving forward. So with that, we are open for discussion and comment. Mr. Horsfall?
Bill, what is the schedule? I mean, if this gets approved, then when will you be done?
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, the goal right now would be that construction would be starting in July of this year, and it's probably about a 9 to 10 month construction period. So we'd be hoping to open late spring of next year. There may be some additional time at the end there as we transition all the services over, but basically by middle of next year, we expect to be fully complete and operational.
Questions, comments? Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder if, as we look at the placement of the building and the parking lots and the location of the right-of-way, if we ever need to expand lane capacity in the future, will we maintain the ability to do that without crowding things or having to take away from, for example, any of the driveways?
Mr. Gunlock?
I guess when you say lane, do you mean the roadway?
The roadway, yeah.
Well, the roadway's 4 lanes now and should be able to handle up to 40,000 ADT a day. You're at about 15 now. So the city of Verona would have to probably increase to the size of Madison before you would need 6 lanes out there. I mean, Verona Avenue has plenty of capacity for long into the future, those 4 lanes. The bottleneck is to the east where you've got a single lane. It's not this area here. So I don't see Verona Avenue expanding to 6 lanes.
Mr. Burns?
Just wanted to add too that an earlier version of the site plan did include a flagpole and monument area right on the northwest corner of this site. That is now shown located outside of that right-of-way, both because of potential concerns working with DOT for placing that kind of structure within the right-of-way, but also I think that gives us some options as we look at that Lincoln and Verona Avenue intersection improvement, that if we need to make modifications at that corner, it does provide us with some right-of-way. I would anticipate that those intersection improvements would be the main improvements that we are looking at in this area, and just making sure that we have enough room to get the traffic signal located in this intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Manley, any further questions?
No.
Okay. Ms. Ritter?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple questions on this map that you have up. Right outside of the apron for the driveway, it looks like there might be a median there. Is that going to be removed?
Mr. Gunlock?
It'll be redone.
It'll make it flat.
It'll be a mountable curb, be a short mountable curb, about 2 inches, just so that it still is there, but they can drive right over it.
Gotcha. And I have
Go
a
ahead.
second question. Unrelated to that, the size of this building, is that similar in size to some other stations around like Middleton? How does it compare to the size of Middleton's station?
Mr. Burns?
I believe it's very similar, perhaps a little bit larger than Middleton, although Middleton has a separate station for fire and EMS, where, as this would be one combined the two. I believe Middleton is approximately 40,000 square feet, and I'm looking at the architect because I know he had worked on that project as well, and he's nodding yes. So that was about 40,000. This, excluding the basement area, is about 41.4, I believe, so just a little bit larger.
The Middleton also has a smaller annex located in the town of Middleton that was built at the same time, I believe it was.
The EMS facility, I think, was 6,000.
When you gonna come up?
In addition to the 40?
Right. And if you would, please introduce yourself. We know you from...
Steve Gosman, architect. Middleton was 40,000 square feet for the fire station, and there's a small, well, it's a full-time EMS building campus. That's about 6,000 square feet. And Mayor, you're correct, they have a satellite facility a mile or two away.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Linder?
So for approval tonight, are we approving anything inside the building, or is it just basically building a fire station there?
Mr. Sayre?
It would just be the site plan. It wouldn't be anything inside. That'd be left up to the council and the committees that are working on this project.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Linder.
You talk about parking. Still seems to me like there's a lot of parking. I don't know if that can be, I don't know, I mean, just 73 spots, and they have, you're talking about 20 people there at a time typically. I know there's extra gatherings, but if there's just green space, potentially they could park on the grass too. I think they do that now for car shows and stuff like that.
Mr. Sayre?
Yeah, parking is, it's challenging because, you have this larger community space within this building. So, during certain events, you're going to have larger parking demands on it as well. Plus, you have a staff there right now, and the staff is going to get larger in the future. Obviously, the city grows. But then you still have the on-call part-time employees or on-call employees that come in when there's a call coming in as well. I know the fire chief is comfortable with the parking. I know the EMS, they're comfortable with the parking as well. I think with the, if you have events going on, I think the only concern is that if you don't have enough, you're gonna have people parking up and down Lincoln Street. Do you really want that or not? I don't know. I think in looking at the parking and the space of the facility in there, I think it probably works. I think long term the parking works probably better than right now. It probably is a little overparked right now, but it's easier to plan it and build it now versus reacting to it in the future, saying we should have put more in. So,
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, just some additional information on the parking question. We've looked at several variations of the parking. I think at one point we looked at a version that had about 60 stalls. There was a concern from the fire and EMS chief that was not enough to accommodate their larger trainings and events. There was a version looked at that had 105 parking stalls. I think there was a concern that perhaps that was going too far in the other direction. This was kind of the alternative with the 73 stalls that were located there. I know that some of the items they're trying to ensure is that if you have a large event going on in the community or the training room, that you can also have enough parking spaces for paid-on-call firefighters that are responding. So you'd have your crews that are on duty, but also when you have a large fire and you're putting out a general call, you need to have spaces that are dedicated for them so that they can park and easily get into the building. The other thing that we had discussed with the certain members of the ad hoc committee about parking was that with the potential, and I know we're not approving this tonight, but the idea of the community theater potentially located on this site is a good opportunity for shared parking, that even though this is a larger lot, if you can coordinate events that could be happening there opposite times from when there's training or events happening at the fire station, there can be some mixed use of parking rather than having two large parking lots in separate parts of the city.
Mr. Linder?
That was kind of where I was going, is that I wonder if it makes sense to wait on some of the parking, if we can do some shared parking with the VACT. From my experience with the VACT is their hours, if they're going to have shows, small shows in there, they'd be in the evenings or on the weekends. I know they're busy on Sunday afternoons a lot of times during the spring, but I wonder just a way that they could, share some of that parking and maybe not have 73 to start and have a lower number. And if we need it when they add the VACT, maybe we could add them back in. I don't know, or just share. I guess that was my thoughts.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Horsfall?
Yeah, I guess, how soon are you gonna have the drainage stormwater question answered? And the part two is, Bill, you mentioned, we are gonna approve this today, right? That's what the staff report says?
Yes. Mr. Burns?
Okay, I missed
Yeah, just to
Stormwater.
clarify, I was just referring to the VACT portion that's
okay,
shown
okay.
on the site. It's not something that would be approved tonight, but the plan for the fire station would be for the site plan approval this
Okay,
evening.
thanks.
And
Stormwater.
Yeah, the stormwater. Mr. Gunlock?
Well, I have talked to the design engineer about stormwater. He had a multitude of basins shown originally, and now he's down to one larger basin in the back. I don't know that he has all the calculations completed, but the intent is either here or a regional basin that would handle a portion of the stormwater south of City Hall here.
I guess my point is, we typically, when we do these, if there's something lagging, then we say stormwater shall be approved by the city engineer and stuff like that. But when it's the city property, it was like we're approving what we're doing, so I wish we had that tied down a little bit tighter so that we don't have to kind of throw it into a conditional use or something, or not a conditional use, but a condition of approval. Any other
Mr.
thoughts
Burns?
from anybody else, or-
Yeah, just in our discussions with Ron Reeder, our Public Works Director, I think his preference would be to try to treat as much stormwater as possible in the regional facility located south of City Hall, but we know that we would have to go through a permitting process for that. So we also wanted to look at where stormwater could be located on this site. I think what we would intend to do, assuming the site plan is approved, that we would go forward and start that permitting process and look at making those improvements next spring for that stormwater detention area. Likely there would be temporary stormwater located on this site, and we also wanted to work with the design engineer for this project to ensure that if for some reason the permitting was held up, that we can accommodate stormwater here. So I understand it's a little bit of a moving target, and ideally we'd have it nailed down here, but I think that given that permitting process that we need to go through, it may be appropriate to have approval conditional on final acceptance or approval by the city engineer once we know what that regional facility can accommodate.
In which normally I would say that on a project that isn't city-sponsored or city-owned, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion about this, or, I don't want to hold up the job either, so that's the.
Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if I understand Mr. Horsfall's point correctly, we want to make sure that we're treating a city proposal in the same manner as we would treat anybody who's an applicant bringing a project before the city. I guess from my standpoint, if what is before us is a site plan that shows a single, rather large detention basin in the southeast corner of the property, that if we approve this site plan, that's what's approved, would we not need to come back and make an amendment to the site plan or a revision to the site plan if the city ultimately chose to do a regional approach for stormwater management?
Mr. Sayre?
For some projects in stormwater, we do have the details completely flushed out, and you have ponds that are underground facilities in place. And I will say, between most site plan and construction, there always are some small, minor changes that occur, and some of it relates to stormwater. Sometimes it relates to, the building itself too. So there always is a kind of a slight change always to every project, and every project isn't exactly 100% down to the detail what it always is shown on. There's always some issues that come up during construction. Looking at the pond, I think you could put it with a condition on there that stormwater management plans have to be approved by the city engineer. We've done that before. I think that's consistent with what we've done in the past. We've looked at stuff in the past as well for other projects that have shown drawings like this as well, and I think we've put that condition on there too. So I think I'm comfortable with that. I think you can, if you want to come back, if the on-site retention goes away, I think you can also stipulate that as well too. But personally, I'm comfortable with it because there are always minor changes that occur to site plans, especially as it relates to the stormwater. There always are some final details that have to be worked out and finalized in the future. So, if you want to come back, though, I know I'm comfortable with that recommendation.
Mr. Gunlock?
By state administrative code, the city cannot break ground out here until such time that the stormwater has been addressed and approved. I mean, you just cannot start early foundation or anything if the stormwater is not approved. You cannot start that. I would say if the stormwater basin gets smaller, so be it. If it got bigger, then they should probably come back for a new site plan, just to look at that. If it gets smaller, I don't think that's a problem.
Ms. Ritter?
And obviously, if it moved to a regional location, then that would be even more significant than it getting larger. So it would be your recommendation to come back?
Mr. Gunlock?
If we go to a regional basin, this basin's going to get smaller, and I would say they do not have to come back.
Okay.
We cannot treat all the water from this site at the regional basin that we're going to build or plan on building, but there is a permit process. We're trying to get the state and the county into a meeting next week or the following week to address the permitting. They may say you can't do what we plan to do, and if such, then you're going to see a basin likes on this drawing right here. But I'm hoping that we can get a small regional basin to treat at least half of the water on this site, and this pond can shrink, or it's not really a pond, it's a bioretention filter. So it's going to be dry 90% of the time.
Mr. Lytle?
From my perspective, there's clearly been a lot of thought put into stormwater management and will continue to be, and that it will be a back and forth process between the engineer of the project and the city engineer. So I would be perfectly comfortable with a motion that just simply states contingent upon approval of a stormwater management plan, stormwater plan by the city engineer, like we would treat any other project.
Is that a motion, Mr. Lytle? I'm asking.
I'd be happy to formalize that.
We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. If you weren't going to make it, I was going to. So. We have a motion by Mr. Lytle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Horsfall. And again, that adds the contingency. Are there questions or comments on the approval of the site plan? Mr. Manley?
I'm just curious, and I know that this is a site plan review for the fire station, but if there was another building added to this site, whether it's the VACT or something else, would the detention basin that's shown on this drawing handle the impervious surface that would be created, or that would need to be treated for both facilities?
Mr. Gunlock?
I do not know that, because I don't know how much area here he has addressed in this basin. I mean, I haven't been given any calculations whatsoever. This is the design engineer's concept, so I can't tell you that this is too big, too small, the right size, and how much it's going to treat.
That might be something for us to be thinking about, if you really think there's a strong possibility that another building could go on this site.
Just going to ask Steve, is that anything you can address or not? Or Tyler? Please, if you would.
Tyler Smith, the design engineer from Grafe. When we were asked by the city to preliminarily determine whether or not this building, the VACT building and parking lot, would work on this site, we also took into consideration that we would also need to do stormwater. So we did some very preliminary, and yes, we haven't sent any calculations to Mr. Gunlock, but we have done very preliminary calculations that shows us that this size of pond would take care of the overall site, including the VACT and the corresponding parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Linder?
Just one more back to the parking, if, you know, I guess if come to the future, if we just find a way to share with VACT, you know, that, I guess that's what I would go for. And the other thing is the trees in the back, if it looks like a lot of them are gonna be gone, but if we can save any of those, I think those are really nice, those pine trees. I don't know if that's possible, save those when it comes to construction time, then that'd be fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Those are some of the things that the ad hoc committee has discussed as well, so. Mr. Horsfall?
Just one last comment that this is really a great looking building, but I've heard comments back that, you know, are we spending, you know, Cadillac versus what is really needed? So I just want to put that out there. I'm going to vote for it, but that's comments I've heard, so thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we do have a motion before us to approve the site plan review with a contingency that final approval on the stormwater management plan be done by the city engineer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are on agenda item number 11, which is discussion and possible action regarding initial site plan review, rezoning, and conditional use permit amendment for Epic Systems Corporation to construct an annex building located at 1979 Milky Way. Mr. Sayre, if you'd provide the background, please.
Thank you. Epic is requesting to construct a new annex building to replace their existing annex building on their property. For location purposes, the existing annex building is this building located right here in the white. The buildings to the south are the future Campus 4 buildings and parking structure. If you go out there today, there's a big hole in the ground, and the annex building is right next to the hole in the ground. The future annex building would be constructed in this spot here, which is located immediately east of the solar field out there. The request is to construct a 36,000 square foot annex building. It would be used as contractors' offices for the time being. When construction wraps up in the future, it would then be used as storage for Epic equipment. So it's being constructed so they could drive vehicles into the top level, and they could also drive vehicles into the bottom level as well. So the use right now would be for the annex building. The long-term use would be more as a storage building itself. What's required of this is a site plan review. It also require a rezoning. This parcel in this area is currently zoned agriculture, and this is also zoned ag as well. Both of those, or at least part of this one, would have to be rezoned as part of this process. And we'd also require a conditional use permit amendment to the group development, as this would be an additional building as part of their campus. From a bulk standpoint, it does meet all setbacks. The building would be 40 feet high when measured at the lowest point. It's being built into a hill, so that's kind of a deceiving number, but the tallest point, it would be 40 feet. Access would be from the existing parking lot here to the north. Along with the project, they would construct 2 parking lots to accommodate contractors in this area and also in this area. Staff has no concerns with the parking lot or the access. Parking would provide up to 230 parking spaces for the time being, and probably at some point when the use goes away, that would be converted back into green space. Landscaping plans were not submitted, but will be required in the future. Epic has a pretty strong and consistent history of providing more landscaping than what's required, so staff has no concerns with that. The building itself will look like a barn. It will fit into the theme of the campus, especially the outbuildings. It'll be red in color, it'll be metal siding, metal roof. Once again, staff has no concerns with it. The building probably won't be too visible, if visible at all, from the roadway. One item to note is the project would be located on a private septic and private well. This property is not located within the urban service area. It's outside the USA, and obviously that USA amendment process is a longer process, so the applicant is proposing to put this on a private well and a private septic system. One of the conditions for approval that the city will place on this is that when municipal services do become available to this building, that the applicant will have a certain set time period in place. I think it's 30 or 90 days. I know Ron Reeder sent a letter to the EPIC already about this, but we will place that condition in the conditional use permit that when those municipal services are available to this property, they will be required to hook into those whenever that occurs in the future. So with that, this is the initial review. So staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicants.
Questions or comments? You've heard the background. Mr. Horsfall?
Once again, it just goes against my, belief that city is on water, sewer and water. So is there any way that you can relocate this so it's inside the urban service area versus, because it looks like the line is right there, and that you're just, doing the septic system.
Bruce
Bruce?
Richards from Epic again. We've looked at lots of different sites. A couple issues is visibility. We're putting it down in the valley to get it out of sight for one. Two, not knowing where the campus expansion is going to end up. We're trying to preserve some of the area, and we would like to make this building permanent for storage when it is complete with contractors and they're out. So we kind of picked a site that's a little bit out of the way, is why it was picked there. One of the things I have been talking to Ron Reeder about putting city water to it, if we can do that, because he has a concern with the well being close to the city well. So we are talking about that. But until the urban service area is approved, we're not able to put it on septic or on city sewer. So.
I was, before you go on, Jeff, I was just going to make the point that Bruce did, and I think that that's important, that the current annex, it always was the intent that that building would come down.
Yes.
When the construction stopped. What they're talking about now is a permanent facility, and that would turn into a maintenance facility for them when construction was completed. And as Mr. Sayre had indicated, that a condition would be placed on it, that at the point when city services were available, that they would have to connect. So, I mean, I'm just reiterating what Bruce said.
We'd prefer not to be on septic also, so.
Right. But
So what is
go
the
ahead, Jeff.
timing for the urban service area in this area? I mean, when's the building proposed to be built, and when's urban service area supposed to be extended? Is it such that, are we, running up against a time limit that, we need this building yesterday?
We
And
need
that's
to.
why we're doing this?
Yes, we need the building that we're in presently out of the way. With the number of people housed in that building, I'd have to move in 20 contractor trailers to get around it, and we'd rather put up a building and house them in a building with inside toilets than go back to trailers and porta potties, so.
Well, that was our next suggestion.
And as they said, this building is on the edge of the excavation today, and what we'd like to do is just get it away from the edge of the excavation for safety reasons, for one. Plus, we'd like to remove part of that hill for future expansion.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Horsfall, in response to your question about the timeline for approval of an urban service area, that is really difficult to estimate. I think the Southwest application took us nearly 6 years to get that through. So, Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take the opposite view of Mr. Horsfall on this, and I think it's important to remember that a lot of us went through the consolidation exercise with the town of Verona back in, I think that was 2007 when the actual vote took place. And if I remember correctly, in terms of city residents, it was about 80 or 90% that voted in favor of consolidation. And had the town of Verona voted for consolidation, we would have had a city with many, many septic systems located within the city. And that doesn't scare me. That doesn't concern me either. I just don't really understand the argument against well and septic, especially with today's technology and the ability to do very safe well and septic for residential purposes, and I'm sure for this purpose as well. I just, if there's a reason to not be supportive of this, I guess from my standpoint, it's not the fact that it happens to be outside of the imaginary line that is our urban service area. I think you have a very legitimate need to construct this building, and the fact that you can't have optimal placement on one side of that imaginary line as opposed to the other is not a good reason to deny the project.
Mr. Linder?
Is there plans to try and get this area into the urban service area to make the request?
Eventually, I could see it going to the urban service area, but right now, we're looking at some other urban service area we're gonna need for future expansion if we continue to grow, and this was not on the priority list in that area. This was more put a service building out of the way that isn't visible for one. It's on, and if you were to look at the topography of the land, it's on the other side of a ridge. That's the reason it ended up there also. It's kind of in a valley between the people on Country View won't be able to see it, and the people on the other side of the ridge won't be able to see it. So it was a nice hidden spot. That's why it was picked.
So if you request additional urban service area somewhere else, you might include this at the same
Yes.
time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Horsfall?
So just to counter to Mr. Manley, eventually it's going to be in the urban service area, so why not make it a priority? You know, again, my definition of city is on sewer and water. I know there's cases where that's not the case, but town is on septic and well. So it's in the definition. It's not in the, you cross the line and then you go to something else. So in this, we're looking for feedback, and this is my feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Other questions, other comments? As far as the urban service area, I think the city will have to continue to have conversations with EPIC and with ourselves as to when we take a look at, for example, applying for the north neighborhood in that urban service area, do we want to include some of the EPIC land in that application or not? You know, is that a separate application or is it a combined application? But that's something as a city we need to have further conversations with, yeah. Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think it's really important for us as city planners to keep in mind that the track record of CARPC with respect to urban service areas has been one of setting almost quota-like targets for individual municipalities in terms of the number of acres that they would be willing to approve. And when I look at the need for additional residential housing within the city, from my standpoint, it doesn't make sense to say, let's pursue as quickly as possible an urban service area expansion so we can get this barn-like structure in an area that's completely almost invisible to anybody from any road into an urban service area so they can convert from a well and septic to city services, as opposed to utilizing those finite acres for residential development and other commercial development within the city.
Mr. Lytle?
Thank you. This is maybe more a question for Adam or Bill. I know the previous documents described how the layout of the parcels for EPIC create some issues where we've got buildings on more than one parcel or multiple buildings on a parcel. You mentioned that part of this process will involve some rezoning. We're able to do that rezoning without triggering any issues related to the TIF and parcels that are or aren't in the TIF.
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, the short answer is that that shouldn't be a problem at all. I mean, the parcels we're talking about for the rezoning would be probably a small, chunk of land in that area around the annex building, and also there's a 40-acre piece of land to the east of here that I think is probably already being used for parking and some, storage. I mean, so it's already being actively used as part of the campus setting, so it's kind of one of those no-brainers of taking it out of the ag use and putting it into suburban industrial. So no, it won't impact the TIF, and it won't impact any type of land division out here.
Other questions, comments? Any further additional feedback we'd like to give? Mr. Linder?
I just throw it out there, I'm okay with the well and septic out there. I think it's hidden out there, and I'll be consistent like Mr. Horsfall is consistent on his side. So.
You know,
Go
one
ahead,
other
Bruce.
comment I just want to make. Eventually, this goes to a storage building. So today, there will be, you know, a couple hundred people in this building, but eventually, when construction's done, the septic system may come out when we're done, because it's not intended to be an office building. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Richards. We are now on agenda item number 12, which again, we are not taking any action. This is initial site plan review and group development, conditional use permit to allow for the construction of a 26,500 square foot industrial building located on lot 25 in Liberty Business Park. Mr. Sayre?
Thank you. So this is initial review to allow for construction of a second building on Lot 25 in Liberty Business Park. Lot 25 is this lot on the screen here between Clarity on the north, Liberty on the south, on the west, and Laser on the south. So this is the lot in question right here. Last year, the city did approve a 30,000 square foot flex building that is approximately in this area on this site, and the request tonight is an initial review for an additional flex building which will be located east of that one we approved approximately in this area. So once again, this is what it looks like today. We have, or without the building today, we have Liberty Drive with a temporary cul-de-sac at the end. We have the building that was approved by the Plan Commission last year, and then this is be the second flex building. Going forward with this, it will require a site plan approval, and also will require a group development because we'd be placing two buildings on one property. But tonight is the initial review. From a bulk standpoint, setbacks weren't provided on there, but it appears to meet all the required setbacks. Future submittals will need to show that. One item that I've raised to the applicant is to take a look at is actually taking this second flex building and rotating it 90 degrees, so making it parallel to the future Clarity Street, so putting it in an east-west configuration like this. The reason I suggest that and encourage it is that I'm concerned about the visibility of this building. I'm concerned that the users on the southern end here just aren't going to be visible from the roadway. I think in long term, there may be some struggles to find tenants to lease those spaces because they won't be able to be seen from the road. You know, Liberty Drive is going to be the major north-south road going through the site. Clarity Street, you know, it's really kind of unknown what's going to happen to the east here. I mean, it's going to be at some point be industrial land, but we do know that Liberty will be that major north-south road with a lighted intersection at M. So my recommendation is actually to pick this building up and turn it 90 and make it on an east-west orientation. That would open up the visibility to Clarity Street, so if someone were coming there, a customer or a client, they could find it a lot easier instead of it being kind of stuck off the southern end here. So that's the one concern that I had about the site plan that I've asked the applicant to take a look at, kind of consider that and see if that's a change they could possibly make. The second, you know, one thing looking at is if we go with this current configuration, I think we definitely want to take a look at this parking area in the middle here. Trying to look at that, maybe get the asphalt to be a little less asphalt in there. That's approximately 2 acres of land between the two buildings, and it's a lot of concrete and pavement in there. So if we can somehow use that space a little better, that'd be a nice feature if this is the orientation that stays that way. From a parking standpoint, they're showing approximately 110 parking spaces for this site. I think that's probably a little too many. I think, you know, if the applicant wants to take a look at showing some parking as possible future parking in the future instead and kind of having that option open, that might be a smart idea. But initially it looks like there's a lot of parking in there. One item that staff will recommend as this goes forward and pretty much try to require is the construction of Clarity Street. We feel the street needs to be constructed concurrently or before occupancy of this building is granted. We don't believe putting truck traffic and vehicle access through an additional parking lot in this area would be appropriate. Second reason to construct Clarity Street is to put the infrastructure in the ground, to run utilities in the ground. Long term, it makes sense to put that roadway in so this building can easily hook into those utilities. If that street's not installed, it's going to be very challenging to run utilities to this property. So Clarity Street will most likely be required to be constructed at the same time this building or before occupancy is granted. Stormwater and drainage have not been submitted at this point. They'll be finalized during the final drawings itself, so those will be submitted in the near future. Architecturally, the proposed building does have brick, metal, split face CMU, and EFIS. Staff recommends the Plan Commission take a look at these materials and actually look at the building design as well, and try to get a building that is more similar to what we approved last year. And that building that we approved last year looked like that. Had a little more glass to it, had a little more character to it. It wasn't a straight line. The building had some undulation to it. I think if they kind of used this building as a prototype and then played with the material colors or the materials, having a similar looking building, because it is in the same property, I think that is appropriate, but just changing the look of it with materials or colors would add a lot of character to it, and also ensure that this building is a high quality building that has, I think this one that they submitted is a little boring, to be honest. I think we've approved something out there that is better than what they submitted, and I think working off of that would be appropriate. So with that, this is the initial review. I know the applicant's here tonight. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions you have, but staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Any questions or comments, or Mr. Gunlock?
Just a comment that stormwater is addressed in the regional basin here. They will still have to address oil and grease off the parking lot, but there isn't a regional basin out here to address volume and TSS removal.
Thank you, Mr. Gunlock. Mr. Lytle?
I guess for my part, reviewing the staff report and what Adam's provided, I think I'm pretty much completely in agreement with his recommendations in terms of trying to match the existing building architecture. I know that it's potentially less visible from the main Liberty Avenue, Liberty Street, but I feel like we would use this as the bar, and as we move east, I think they would expect some greater flexibility as they move into more of a medium to heavy industrial or commercial use. So given where we are in the overall site, I would like to see similar architecture to the existing building.
Thank you. Further questions, Ms. Ritter?
I don't have any further questions. Is the applicant here? Okay, great. I concur with Adam's recommendations on the orientation of the building. I'm curious to know, is there a use that would require so many parking spots between the buildings? And then my final one is on the building design. I would much prefer to see a design similar to Building 1 at this location, especially in such close proximity to the other.
And if you would, identify yourself, please.
My name is Jerry Berkman. I'm with Dimension 4 Architects. We're working the project, and we worked on the previous building. And I think I'm agreeing with you on the architecture and the buildings. I think we want to stay in the same family, the same palette of materials, and we do need to put more into that building, kind of get them. I don't think I want to do like a mirror that it's the exact same building, but I want to get the materials, get the openings, get a little more activity going in the buildings, get a few offsets on that. So I think we can accomplish that rather easily. The first building we broke ground on actually last week, so we're pushing it with that. One of the things we heard from the tenants, there's this group of tenants that do want visibility on the street and exposure on that, but there's a second group of tenants who are actually like service providers or providers that do mainly over the internet or don't really, they have an office, so they have a mailbox is really about it, but they really serve their customers with those. And they don't need the street visibility, and quite honestly, they don't want to pay for the street visibility, but they want to be out in the park because they see what's going on there, and being close, they can serve those tenants. So we intentionally orientated the buildings as we did to not actually turn that one in front of around onto the building, partially for that reason. We already have a tenant lined up for the one corner toward the far end down there. But the other one is we have garage doors on the back of our first building, all right? And this second building, because it's a flex building, is going to have a lot of garage doors. And our thought was we want to hide those garage entrances as much as possible. And we really didn't want them facing back toward the south, which is where our future commercial developments are going to be, and that's going to be more retail type of development through that. So we wanted to actually back our garage doors up to each other. They were using the same area between those two buildings for truck access, for backing up and going back and forth in those areas. And our thought was we'd add more like screening and fencing and landscaping along like the streetscape on those areas, but we could hide everything toward the back. So we can combine areas like trash areas. We get one kind of combined area back in there rather than one in one location, one over in the other. You know, snow removal, even like infiltration back in those areas, we can get those combined in one lot. So I think we have potential actually to reduce the amount of paving that we're going to do by accomplishing this also. We can keep our pavement more under control and kind of keep it into one kind of controlled area. The other thing we've heard from some of these tenants is they've gone out and seen the site, and along that side where our building now faces, there's a heavy tree line through there, so there's a lot of heavy landscaping. And some of them, their preference actually is I'd rather look into this heavy landscaping area rather than looking out into the streetscape itself or whatever. So these are tenants that are more, again, don't need the visibility, don't want the visibility, but they want to be out in those areas and actually work with that. Parking, I think you're right, we have enough space in that. We don't want to put in pavement if we don't have to, so I think we can gladly cut back on some of those areas. So I think we're in pretty much agreement and stuff, but the building orientation is kind of key to what we're doing to that. You know, we'll gladly spruce things up, get more landscaping and fencing, but we do want to keep it, the orientation. I think it's just a better traffic flow and better functionality for us.
Mr. Manley?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking at the drawing on page, I guess it's the 99th page of our packet, and maybe what we're seeing there isn't the full extent of the parcel, but just eyeballing it, it doesn't look like if you took a 331-foot building and oriented it east-west that it would even fit right there. Or is this just only part of the parcel?
It wouldn't fit actually where the property line is right now, where the tree line is, which we're trying to maintain. So it would shorten us up. It would actually limit our access. Wouldn't have access probably around that one end of the building. So just a couple other things kind of came into play in the orientation what we're trying to do.
Mr. Linder?
So with to the east side of the building, there's not going to be any road. There's just going to be tree line, and they're going to look in the trees, and you can just drive your car around the front of the building, and that's it. There's no road in front of there potentially, or.
Oh, there's a drive with a single row of parking on that side.
It's just a driveway, but they're not an actual road going through there. They'll be overlooking just the driveway through the.
Right, you're just kind of looking
and
over your own
trees
old,
over there, and that's
right.
it. So I guess.
Go ahead, Mr.
I guess I
Linder.
understand a little better what you mean by less pavement, because if you turn it the other way, it would stretch a little farther, and you'd probably have a bigger rectangle in the whole.
Yeah, because I can share some of the truck turning races and some of those things now, or if I bring them the other way, then I've got to accomplish those in a separate area. And we show kind of that row of parking between the two. In reality, I think as we start to get the final layout on that, there's going to be tree islands in there. That's probably going to be part of our infiltration, type of areas that will take care of that. Snow removal holding areas, trash things. So we're going to we'll break that lot up, when we get the final development plan in through there.
Other thoughts, comments? We're not taking any actions here this evening, so I would just suggest if other thoughts come up after tonight, please feel free to contact Mr. Sayre. Thank you, Jerry. Next we have, again, this will be no action, initial site plan review and conditional use permit to allow for the construction of 62 apartment units on Lot 2 of the Scenic Ridge subdivision. Mr. Sayre, if you would, please.
Thank you. This is initial review for a site plan and conditional use permit that would allow for the construction of these 2 apartment buildings. This does take site plan approval and also requires a conditional use permit for the use and a conditional use permit for a group development. Once again, we have 2 buildings on 1 parcel, which requires a group development. At this time, the applicant is not requesting any zoning exemptions with this project, does not anticipate requiring any zoning exemptions with this project. From a bulk standpoint, the buildings would be set back approximately 35 feet from any public roadway and more than 100 feet to the south property line. Staff has no concerns with the setback. Access, there's 2 access points off of Acker Drive. The northern access would be for the underground parking structure for this west building, and the southern access point would be for the parking lots and also the underground parking structure for the easternmost buildings. We did not complete a complete parking analysis. We need additional details from the applicant of types of units. But as I said previously, the applicant has indicated that they will meet all zoning requirements for this project. Detailed stormwater management plans are not submitted with this and will be required in the future. An existing pond is located west of the site in this area. Most likely they'll be utilized as part of this project. Architecturally, the applicant is proposing materials that are high quality. This would include brick veneer and hardy plank siding. Probably the best comparison of looking at our similar projects in the city would be the Sienna Ridge project. Very similar materials to what was done for that project as well. So staff has no concerns with the materials as submitted. Landscaping plans were not submitted as part of this project. There's one important area that the applicant's going to have to consider when he does create those landscaping plans, and that's going to be along the south property line. The site does buffer a residential area, and by ordinance they have to provide a opacity along that line of 0.3. Staff recommends that be a vegetative buffer instead of a fencing buffer. Long term, that holds up better. Second, there's a significant hill going to the east towards Locust Drive, and if they put some pine trees in instead of a fence, it'll serve the purpose a lot better than a fence that's only 6 feet tall. So staff does recommend that when they create those landscaping plans, they take a close look at that southern property line. Residential phasing policy, the city does have a residential phasing policy that was effective October 1st, 2012. This lot, which is lot 2 of Scenic Ridge, and we also have lot 1, which is located west of this property. Both of those lots were grandfathered in as part of that phasing policy. The caveat with that was, though, that any projects on lot 1 or 2 had to meet all the zoning requirements. So that's part of the big reason why today this is being done with straight zoning versus a PUD. If it was done a PUD, they would actually fall under that residential phasing policy, since they're meeting every zoning requirement, including density, including parking, including building height. The phasing policy does not apply to this project because of that. However, I will just note, I'll go through real quick the other multifamily projects we have approved so far since 2013. That includes Velocity, which is 24 apartment units at 9 Mountain Road and Paoli Street. That's a mixed-use project. That applicant or that developer still intends to move forward, hopefully, with that project this year. And we also have the Murray Glen apartments where we approved 108 market rate apartments and 111 senior housing units. 76 of those units will be constructed in 2014, and the other 32 market rate units will be constructed in 2015. Once again, the policy doesn't apply. I just wanted to make the Plan Commission aware of what we've approved out there, just so you have it in your background. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant. I know the applicant is here tonight, and he'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Comments, questions, Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to just express my my agreement with Mr. Sayer that I think there's got to be some significant screening of that parking lot so that the property owners on, I think it's Chapel Royal, whose backyards would abut this property, have a good buffer. The other question I have for the applicant, there are some fences that are what I believe are fences anyway, shown on this detail or on this map. Maybe they're not fences.
Mr. Sayer, if you would, please.
Those are retaining walls.
Retaining walls,
Yeah.
okay. Then a question I guess I would have is there any fencing or other screening that's being proposed to hide the parking lot from Locust Drive?
Mr. Sarah?
I think you could request that if you'd like to see that. I know obviously Locust Drive is significantly higher than where this is at, so I think it would probably be appropriate if you put some landscaping between that eastern retaining wall and Locust Drive. That'd probably be appropriate. I know landscaping plans have not been prepared yet, so I think that request would be fine at this moment.
Well, if that is a retaining wall, it looks to me anyway like there would be space to do plantings between the parking lot and the wall itself, which I think would be a nice addition.
Mr. Horsfall?
The parking lot's below, so it goes down, then the retaining wall goes up, and then it goes to Locust. So what you want to do is on the eastern side.
Comments, questions, Mr. Linder?
I got a couple comments. I'm glad it's not one building. I wish it was more than two. The 31 unit building, they're still pretty good size. I mean, you got the drawing showing them. There's a lot of apartments there, and it's right next to the residential. So I'd prefer to see 3 buildings. And also the parking lot, I wonder, you know, you got people for the backside, the second building, got to drive through the parking lot on the first one. You know, and if you reoriented or different way to make it so they can have didn't have to drive through the one parking lot to get to the other. I think there could be benefit for that, so you're not, people going to their cars don't have to watch for through traffic going through there. And I agree with the screening, because this is going to be really close to residential. Big trees, you know, a lot of trees on the sides. That's my feedback.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Lytle?
I believe the report mentioned that there is a second lot approved for multifamily in Scenic Ridge. Where is that located in relation to this site?
It would be directly to the west of the detention pond.
Okay, so kind of the northwest corner of the development?
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Ritter?
I agree with the landscaping suggestions, especially between the residential lots 3 through 8. But I do have to say that the renderings of the buildings look very nice, and the materials look like they're high quality. So I think the building design is nice. Whether it's 2 or 3, obviously we always like to see smaller buildings, but they look aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Mr. Horsfall?
I agree with Mr. Linder that, I mean, you look at the elevation view on the last page, these look 3 stories high. They just look out of place, I think, with the area, with the residential. You know, the ones that are, you know, up from the former Mac Center, those are 3 stories and stuff like that. And it's just, they seem to overpower the area. I know there's a reason to go 3 stories because you want to get the number of apartments you need, but it just, you know, looking at it, it just kind of overpowers the area, and that's kind of, I don't know if there's anything more than that, but.
And I was going to comment, perhaps the applicant wants to comment as well. I think, Mr. Linder, you talked about the placement or the orientation of the buildings. And my guess is, I don't know for sure, but my guess is that the buildings are placed as they are because of the topography, and the topography would lend itself to, you're not going to see the 3 floors unless you're looking at it really from the west and possibly some from the south. But because the topography, you're not going to see that from Locust. Just my comment. Mr. Manley?
Yeah, if I'm looking at this topographical map correctly, it looks like there's about a 45-foot drop from the east end of the property to the west end of the property. And I just wonder, Bob, when we're looking at stormwater for this, when the site plan comes forward, when you add this much impervious surface, does that existing stormwater basin to the west, is that big enough to handle all of this?
Mr. Gunlock?
The stormwater pond to the west was sized for, it's a regional basin for the whole subdivision. And when the basin was designed, it was designed for this lot to be multifamily and have more impervious area than the residential, single-family residential lot. So it was taken into account when that basin was designed.
Other questions, comments, any other feedback for the applicant? If not, we know that there'll be more information coming forward. Thank you. We are now on to agenda item number 14, which is, again, no action, but feedback this evening. Initial site plan review and conditional use permit to allow Sugar River United Methodist Church to use the building located at 415 West Verona Avenue, which most people know as Wildcat Lanes. Mr. Sayre, if you would, please.
Thank you. Sugar River Church is currently located at 130 North Franklin Street. That's the old city library. They're requesting initial review for a conditional use permit to allow them to occupy the old Wildcats site. If approved, they'd move out of their current location into this location. Churches are classified as indoor institutional land uses and require a conditional use permit when located within the Downtown Design and Use Overlay District, which this property is located within that district. So the existing building as shown on the screen, I think we're all probably very familiar with how that looks. But just for reference purposes, that's what the existing building looks like. From a bulk standpoint, the applicant is not proposing to construct any new buildings as part of this project. However, one of the requirements in the ordinance does have a standard for indoor institutional land uses. And what that says is that those structures should be set back a minimum of 50 feet from any residential property line. In this situation, there's an actual, the school district is, the school is over in this area, and also the school owns this parking lot as well. Those are both zoned residential. So while this is not new construction, we do have that requirement in the ordinance, and I would just like to hear the Planning Commission's comments on that, if that requirement is applicable to this site, because it's not constructing a new building, but we do have that in the ordinance. We estimate the setback for this existing building is approximately about 0 feet off the east lot line. It's really close to that lot line, and probably approximately 25 feet to the south from the school district's property to the south, which is zoned residential. So like I said, just looking for feedback on that, if that will be enforced as part of this project or not. As stated previously, the use does require a conditional use permit because of the downtown overlay district. The use is actually a permitted use within the underlying district, which is UC, but we have the overlay district on top of it, which requires that conditional use. Access to the site will be virtually unchanged. Parking, once again, will be virtually unchanged as well. They'll need to stripe some of the stalls, kind of clean up the lot as they go through this process. But one of the things that we did not do as part of this is a full parking analysis. They're still working through some of the interior designs and layouts and capacities. We do require 1 parking space per 5 seats at a maximum capacity within the building. So as the applicant's working through that, there's something important to keep in mind of making sure the site does meet the parking requirements. Landscaping, the applicant is proposing some new green space in the northeast corner of the site as shown here. That's currently asphalt. That would be torn out and replaced with a green space and more of a landscaping feature. Architecturally, building modifications are being proposed from an architectural standpoint. They're proposing a new and revised entry point, including a drive-up canopy in the frontier as the entrance to the church. There'd be new glazing in the north facade and a possible sunscreen shade structure on the north facade. updated exterior finishes and exposed sides of building, and there'd be screening of mechanical units. I encourage the applicant to take a look at the renderings. If you have any feedback to the applicant, that'd be important as well. One item to point out too is we recently adopted our downtown plan, and one of the things in the plan does specifically mention this property, and it does recommend that this existing building be replaced with a 2.5-story mixed-use commercial building containing 21,800 square feet of space. Specifically, the plan states the majority of the commercial properties will remain for the foreseeable future, excluding 2 sites, 415 West Verona Avenue and 420 West Verona Avenue. These properties were recommended as redevelopment sites due to their size, location, and ownership. The former bowling alley at 415 West Verona Avenue is a major entry point to the downtown. It is important that development build near the intersection with a signature building at least 2 stories in height. So that's language from the plan that we adopted a few months ago. So the proposed improvements of this building, obviously won't prevent the site from being redeveloped. I think it's one of those. It does make it challenging in the future for the site to be redeveloped in the future as we recommended in the downtown plan. It is also what we identified as a gateway site to the downtown. As you kind of come down the hill there, that's the property you see as you come down the hill, and that's part of the reason why it was selected as a more of a gateway to the downtown as well. So as you take a look at the drawings and renderings too, just keep that in mind. If you have any suggestions to the applicant too, that'd be important as well. So with that, staff recommends the Plan Commission review the submitted materials and provide feedback to the applicant. I know the architect is here tonight, and I know representatives of the church are here as well, so they'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sayre. Initial thoughts, feedback, comments? Ms. Ritter?
I have a couple of questions. On the zoning for the school, are all schools zoned residential?
Mr. Sayre?
No, most are zoned institutional public. That's why to be quite honest, I was surprised that was in place at that school there.
And how would that change the setback requirements if it was zoned like the other schools?
You would not have that 50-foot building separation.
Okay. Do you want me to keep rolling
Go
with my
ahead.
comments? Okay, good. A couple of suggestions that I had was, well, first, the question that I had was on signage. Where, if the applicant is here, which I know you are, where were you thinking of putting signage on the building? And then my second thought was, I believe it would be towards the north side of the building, which is on the corner, facing both Verona Avenue and, what is that side street that goes down?
Legion?
Yeah, Legion. Is the addition of either larger or more windows. I think that would maybe balance it out a little bit and add to the look of the building. I know that adds to the cost as well, but that would be part of my feedback. When I initially honestly saw the renderings of this building from Wildcat into this, I was very excited. I mean, I think this is a great location for your church, and would be a great addition to this end of the city. So I look forward to seeing it move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. Did you want to respond to some of the questions? And if you would, just please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name's Brian Driscoll. I'm the Sugar River United Methodist Church building team leader, and this is Doug Paul. He's with R.O. Eberly, our architect. And I guess what I was hoping to do was to provide you some additional background about our church community, and Doug would be taking care of your technical questions. So while Doug addresses maybe some of the questions, I have a background information sheet for you.
Sure. I think you asked about signage.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, can you speak into the microphone,
Yeah.
please? Thank you.
We didn't include signage at this time for the preliminary review. I wasn't even sure if signage was part of the normal site plan approval process, but if it is, we will certainly include the signage for the final submittal. But we were thinking we would probably do, are you familiar with the Methodist iconography?
Mm-hmm.
So there'd probably be kind of a cross shape incorporated into the window framing at the front entry, and then the flame would be a part of that, so that would actually be blended into the architecture. And then the Sugar River logo, we were thinking would go on the north side of the building at the blank wall next to the new glazing area. So there'll be a couple assigned parts of the building there that we'll show in the future.
Again, my name is Brian Driscoll, and I just want to thank Mr. Mayor and the Plan Commission for this opportunity to talk with you tonight. A few things I just want to emphasize in the document that you have in front of you. It just provides you a really nice overview on some facts about our church community. It provides you information about our history, the communities with which our members come from, general attendance, membership, the community service activities that are strong in this community in the state of Wisconsin, throughout the United States, and actually internationally. And finally, some contact information if you need any follow-up. There are a couple themes I just want to make sure to hit on for our community, Sugar River United Methodist Church, and one of them is our vision. We have 3 statements that help to define our community. The first is connect, the second is grow, and the third and final one is serve. And in understanding this being a gateway to the city of Verona, we definitely understand the connection of the physical space, but also understand the importance of the connection of relationships between people. Secondly, the growing. We're in a current location that you're aware of in the old library, and we're very fortunate to be one of the few United Methodist churches in the state of Wisconsin growing as quickly as we are. And that's a reason why we're coming to you today. So we're very fortunate. And finally, the service. I think this is probably the most important part of our church community, and this is what I'd like to emphasize in talking with you today. So we have had a history since 2004, actually. If you take a look at the first page of the fact sheet, we've been in Verona since 2004 and continued community engagement through the present in 2014, so for 10 years. And we will plan to continue to provide a strong and positive presence in the city of Verona beyond 2014, not just for residents, but also for visitors. Secondly, transformation. Sugar River United Methodist Church is in the business of transforming the lives of individuals and families. And we also understand the importance of transforming an opportunity for youth in Verona to have a safe space to get together. This is something that really drove us to do this work. Secondly, the existing building. This existing building provides a transformational opportunity. As Ms. Ritter said, if you look at the existing facility and you look at the wonderful plans that our architect put together, many of us were surprised that they turned out as well as they did, and we're excited for it. We know that this could be and will be, if allowed, become a cleaner, brighter, more inviting space that is welcoming to both visitors and residents in the city of Verona as they enter the city along West Verona Avenue. And finally, about transformation. We are using an existing building so that it is actually more environmentally friendly. We're reusing an existing space that will have less of an impact versus a new facility. And finally, and most importantly, our contributions to the community. If you take a look at the community service list that I provided you, there are more than 14 local examples, and that's just to get started that we could think of over the past week. Originally, we had another team member, Jackie Rustler, plan to give some personal testimony about some of the things that we didn't even think of, and those aren't even on the list. So there are more than 14 local examples here in the community of Verona. There are multiple examples in the state of Wisconsin, and then also, as you can see, several states throughout the United States that benefit from our missional activities. And I also want to include the international mission opportunity that we provide to our members as well as guests in Guatemala. Finally, we do want to at least recognize and understand the concern that Mr. Sayer brought forward with the city's existing plan. We understand this. We also understand the other example of a nonprofit in that same corridor in bringing about this discussion, so we don't want to ignore it. But what we're really hoping is that the positive community services that Sugar River United Methodist Church already provides and has the potential to provide more can at least have an opportunity to make up or outweigh what you're considering on a monetary basis. So what we're looking at is going beyond dollars. We're trying to reach individuals here in Verona and the greater community. So thank you for your patience, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, both of you. Other questions, comments from the Planning Commission members? Mr. Lytle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, it's become clear why we're very conflicted in this situation, where we just went through the process of developing a downtown plan, and for this particular site, it had some very specific goals that really don't match up with the use that you're proposing, while at the same time recognizing that you've been part of our community for 10 years. It's been exciting to see you grow here, and we'd love to see that continue. So as a Plan Commission member, I have a ton of conflicts around, is this the best use for this particular property? Are there other locations in town? And I know you've done a search that could meet your needs as well, perhaps nearly as cost effectively. But what I'd love to, I hope you all have the opportunity to do is get some feedback from council on this, because I think all the things you pointed out and all the good that you're doing in our community really makes us want to weigh this very carefully and give it the consideration it deserves.
Mr. Manley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo Mr. Lytle's comments and, and just let you know that as a city, I think we're very fortunate to have the church here, and we've had a good relationship with the church, and I know you've done good works for our community, because in the crop walk is the one that I'm most familiar with. But there are some challenges. Mr. Lytle mentioned the one with respect to the downtown plan, and I think that's a significant one. The other sort of challenges, as I see them, are that if you look at the downtown design overlay standards, which I was fortunate enough to be on the Plan Commission the first time I was on the commission when those standards were put in place. And if you look at those standards and their applicability, and I want to be very specific for you, section 13-1-372 paren D is the applicability section. And I'm just going to read from that for a moment. It says, the requirements of this section, being the downtown design overlay standards, shall apply to all proposed new structures, to all proposed building additions, and to all changes in the exterior appearance of a building, structure, or appurtenance, and to all new or modified external fixtures, such as light standards, benches, tree gates, fences, and signage. Such development and uses shall comply with the procedures and requirements of this section. And although I think that the concept that you put forward is orders of magnitude better looking than Wildcat Lanes, I'm not sure it meets the standards of the design overlay. I guess the third and final challenge that I want to convey to you as you seek feedback is that up until last month, I was a member of the city council, and one of the things that we had to deal with as we as a city looked to redevelop our downtown was when Erickson Chevrolet was purchased by St. Vincent's, and we ended up with a tax-exempt property on what is essentially our major commercial corridor for our city. And I'm just very concerned about adding any more tax-exempt property to our Verona Avenue corridor, both from the standpoint of city finances, but also from the standpoint of development and trying to have a cohesive development that can build off of each other and really get kind of a synergy of development and redevelopment and infill in the Verona Avenue corridor. And so I guess from my standpoint, you've been a great part of our city, and I hope you'll continue to be. And I just wonder if there are other locations that are not on West Verona Avenue that would be suitable for your church.
Mr. Driscoll?
Mr. Manley, Mr. Lytle, thank you for those comments and the questions. In particular, I'd like to address the efforts and research we did in trying to find a suitable location. And one of the priorities that we had was to remain in the heart of the city of Verona. Our current location is just that. We felt that the location that we're currently looking at is an even better location. And we also looked at least two, I would say at least one seriously and two on the edge. And what we came to was that given the comparison of an existing facility and the opportunity to reuse that facility versus having to buy vacant land and building new, the second option was cost prohibitive for our community, for our church community. It was nearly 2.5 to 3 times more expensive. And given the really challenging work that we've done in our church community to raise the funds to even have an opportunity to purchase this property that's in receivership and has been on sale on the market for over 3 years with no other buyer publicly interested, we felt like this was a sign. It was something that was showing us the way to this location. And I guess we just put it to you on this decision. We do understand the tax implications, but I believe what I said in my opening remarks was that we think we have the opportunity to offset those in other ways in the community and bringing more vibrancy to the gateway and the central corridor. So I know I'm not answering all of your questions, and I'd be happy to answer any details that weren't addressed.
Other questions, comments, feedback? Mr. Linder?
I think Mr. Manley said a lot of it really well. It's probably better than I could say it. It's a challenge, though. You know, it's I understand your positive benefits you bring and what a good community partner you've been. But then I feel like if we, or I struggle with how the financial aspect, you know, with we given tax exempt status for, I almost feel like we're, I don't know, picking a business and giving them a giant donation. It kind of feels that way because we'd be basically giving taxpayer money to one specific organization by taking it off the tax roll. So that's just something I wrestle with. But as far as the look, it looks way better than what it is now. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of concerns. Landscaping looks better. The green space in front I think would be nice. There's just a real lot of positives, with what you got shown here. It's just some of those other questions are a little bigger and a little tougher for me to wrestle with.
Can I comment?
Go ahead.
I read through the planning documents for the city, and I reviewed that, and I agree that this particular facility doesn't really meet what the plan calls for future developments. But I look at the prescriptive requirements for the site, and then I compare those to what the core values of the master plan document actually are. To me, it looked like this document was created to improve the downtown character and to bring activity and life to the area. So I think if you look at this project in terms of what it's going to do and what it achieves in terms of the plan's core values, I think that's the more important reason we do projects. And I think that's the more important reason the plan was written. It's the subtext that the plan creates with the prescriptive requirements, because I think the prescriptive requirements are created for people that are trying to do something for themselves. This project is trying to do something for the community. So I think that is something you should consider when you think about whether or not it meets, you know, the goals of the master plan.
Other comments? If not, I know I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Driscoll, I don't know, a week or two ago, something like that. I agree also. I think that there are some challenges. However, I would say this, that, and I drove past this building almost every day until the last 6 years, and I'm excited that I'm going to see that something's going to happen there, and we're talking about a major investment that you would be making into the facility, not the city. So I think although there are some hurdles, and we've had a good working relationship since you've been located in the city of Verona, ideally, you know, if we wanted to see something else there, the city had the same opportunity to buy that property and we didn't. And now you have an accepted offer on it, I think contingent, if that's correct. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. It said accepted offer to purchase, but I think it's contingent upon approvals.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the city didn't move forward and do that, so we didn't have control. Now you have control of the property as long as we give you the appropriate approvals. And I'm excited about that. I'm just really excited that something's going to happen with that property, so I look forward to hearing more. Other comments, questions? Mr. Lytle?
I guess just procedurally, have you all had a chance, are you planning to talk with the members of the Common Council either individually or as part of a public comment period? I don't know whether that's planned for their agenda or not.
Mr. Sayre?
They've requested to be placed on the next council agenda, which will be next Monday, just for initial review like this, just to kind of talk about the project, and we're going to do that. So that's the next step in the process, to have the conversation with the council.
And just to be completely transparent too, we've also made both alderpersons aware of the project, so we have had conversations with both of them as well as the mayor.
Other questions or comments? We look forward to seeing more of you in the near future.
Thank you.
All right. We have no other business before us this evening, so a motion, Mr. Sayre, if you would. I mean, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, just before we adjourn, I wanted to remind everyone on the Plan Commission that the city is going to be sponsoring an economic development workshop with the Chamber of Commerce that's taking place on May 19th. That's a Monday. That'll be at the Senior Center at 5:30. If anyone from the Plan Commission is interested in attending, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Anything to add, Mr. Sayre? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order. So moved. We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Lytle. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. We are adjourned.